In this section, we're going to take a look at Kafka, one of the most successful applications for handling streaming data at scale. We're going to use an image from Confluent that is one of the supporters of Kafka, and we're going to deploy it into a Docker container. In fact, it's going to be deployed into multiple containers because Kafka actually has quite a number of components that need independence and are distributed across multiple machines. Usually we're going to put them in multiple containers. Kafka allows us to store streams of data in topics, and those topics are stored in multiple partitions within Kafka that ensure that if one machine goes down, then we have our data still stored in other partitions. So Kafka is meant as an application to operate at very large scale. However, it can also operate on your own machine. The goal in a lot of companies is to be able to handle this streaming data and do analytics in real time. We've talked about the necessity of this in modern companies, and here we're going to look at the components of Kafka. Our implementation is going to be a little simpler than the one I showed there. What we're going to do is we're going to spin up Confluent's Kafka REST image, and that's going to be put into 9 containers. And we'll look at how we need to update Docker because we need to increase the storage. And Confluent's version of Kafka has a REST API, and that's what these connections are supposed to indicate. We're going to construct a web server that is going to be both a producer of data, streaming data, and a consumer. So we're going to stand up the server, and then through a web page, we're going to kick off streaming data into a topic, and then we're going to consume that topic in another part of that web server. So let's take a look now at how we implement this. So to do that, we're going to use a Docker Compose file. Let me show you that Docker Compose file. So here it is. It builds several other applications. Zookeeper is one. It builds a broker, and we'll see that it builds many other apps that we're going to use. The most important one is the REST interface that we're going to communicate with. So this REST proxy will handle that API for us. Let's go and build this. So all we need to do is to execute this file. So we can do Now, before we execute this, and this is important, we need to bring up our Docker desktop interface. So here I've got my Docker desktop Docker. There are no applications running, but what I need to do is I need to click on this button and go to resources and increase the resources. They'll be down at a memory of 2 gigabytes. We need at least 6. I'm going to set mine to 8. And if we scroll to the bottom of the page, we can apply this and restart. And it's critical that we do this because the containers will be unstable if we don't. Once you've done that, you can go back to the general interface, and we see we have no applications running. So now we're going to bring up our terminal window, and we've got our Docker Compose file in here, and we're going to do Docker Compose up. And we'll see it starting to build the containers. So here in Docker Desktop, we see Kafka Docker. And if I click on that, it's already spun up the zookeeper, the broker, schema registry. And you'll see these are running on various ports. It's a little lightly typed here, so you can't see it too well. But we're going to be communicating with Kafka via its REST interface, and we'll be able to make contact with it. So let me continue spinning it up. So you see here it's doing a lot of work. Here's the SQL Server. And my machine is beginning to thrash a little, and the fan is spinning up because it's doing a lot of work building these containers. Now that it's spun up, we can make contact with this via our Chrome browser by going to localhost 9021. And that will bring up now a web page that is being served up by our Confluent cluster. And we've got one cluster running. You see that it's already got 273 partitions and 61 topics. We can go and visit the topics. So here are the topics. And we'll see that there are 4 already in place here, as well as many that are hidden. So Confluent itself is using many topics. As I scroll down here, we'll hide them again. But what we're going to do now is interact with Confluent's Kafka, and we're going to produce a new topic, and we're going to subscribe to it as well. So to do that, we need to write a web server. That's the easiest way for us to do it. We can communicate with this in other ways, but we're going to write a web server that has a web page that will produce content and push it into Confluent and also subscribe to it. So let's go and see that code. So what we're going to do now is we're going to write this web server that's both a producer and a consumer. And we're going to write it in JavaScript using Node Express as the web server because that's the easiest. To run it, you're going to need to install Node, and I'll do a separate video showing you how to install Node. But let's go now to the code and take a look at this web server. So here we are in the web server. We're in John Kafka, and I've written under that a server, and it's in the directory hello test. So here's the server. It uses my producer and my consumer, but it sets up a default route here that is a web page, and the web page has 2 forms. One form, when we submit it, it triggers the producer route, and the other form triggers the consumer route. So here's the producer route, and that loads up my producer, which is here. So this is what does the work in communicating with Kafka. So it's loading up Node Kafka and basically communicating with it. And we'll see that we can create a new topic, and then later we can subscribe to it by using this consumer. Okay, let's go and run this. So I can run the server. Let me run it in a separate window so that we can see it running. I'm in John Kafka, and I need to be in hello test. So here we are. So that's where I was showing you the server and the producer and the consumer. And now to run it, we just run node and server.js. and this spins up a web server on port 5000. So let's go to port 5000, and I'm going to hit localhost 5000. I'm going to take this down in size because I want to show you what happens. And so here's our server running, and now let's create a new topic, and we'll call it John01, and we'll submit it. And this is going to create the topic and submit 10 events to it. So here they are: successfully produced, count 1, 2, 3, 4 through 9. Now let's go back and consume that topic, John01, submit. Now we should see it reading those from that topic. There we are, consumed the record, 8, 9, etc. So we're communicating directly with that topic in Confluence Kafka. And though this is fairly simple, this is basically all we need to do. We need to create producers and consumers. Let's go back and take a look at the control center. So here we are in the clusters, and we need to take a look. Let's go back to the topics, and we should see here's topic John01 that we just created. You can see that we hardly used any resources at all. We can go through the details. It's a very simple message, so there's not really very much to see there. And now you see we have 274 partitions. So it's actually doing quite a bit of work. So that's interacting with Confluence Kafka. Why don't you repeat what I've done and spin it up on your machine? So basically, we've set up this environment and we've got this piece totally running. We haven't done any real-time analysis, but we can certainly pump in data and create new topics, and we can consume those topics. So essentially, you've got on your machine now this key piece. Okay, before we leave, let's take everything down. Don't forget to clean up. You don't need all of this running. So I need to make sure I'm using the right docker compose.yaml file. There we go. Now we're stopping them, and we should see them all disappeared. Not quite all done. Okay, now we've cleaned up and everything's finished. So why don't you repeat what I've just done? Okay, bye for now.